Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
Hi, everyone. Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno, and I'm filling in for Jeff tonight. And I'm joined by AJ. I know this morning you kind of had the trump card over us because you were on the East Coast time for the Peacock game, but now we're getting you back. We're keeping you up late to do this video.
It's all good. I mean, the kids were up way before the game. Breakfast was already made before the game was on over here, and I'm kind of a night owl anyway, so it's all good.
All right, you fit in well with us then. And of course, as everybody can see, we have Daniel Starkand back, the Daniel Starkand. Unfortunately, things on the Lakers Nation side have slowed down, but we're always happy to have Daniel on our videos.
Yeah, you might say unfortunately, I might say fortunately, but no, happy to be back. I know everyone missed me. Excited to talk a little Dodgers. Definitely had a lot happen over the last road trip, so excited.
Yeah, and we can already see the comments. Daniel has returned. A lot of Daniel back. Jeff is away for tonight. He was gone this weekend, but he will be back, and we'll get things back to normal where we can have our true host back in there. I'm just keeping the seat warm for him.
You're doing a good job so far.
Thank you. I'm going to try. If I get through this with 2 mistakes or fewer, then I think it's going to be a win. So, as you guys know, if you're watching with us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, thank you. You can subscribe, ring the notification bell. If you're listening on the podcast after the fact, we appreciate that as well. Just a quick rundown of what we're going to be doing tonight. It's going to be a road trip review. Obviously, the Dodgers just finished up their 10-game trip. It's the longest of the season. We're going to get into each individual series and how that sort of went, share some thoughts on those. Then after that, we're going to turn the discussion over to Gavin Stone and kind of, what his 3 starts have sort of been. We're going to talk stolen bases. I know Daniel had some tweets today, and I know AJ has been on it as well. And we're also going to get into James Outman slump, Thompson, and some injury updates. And then, of course, we'll end with questions at the end. So if you have any of those, make sure you save them. But yeah, so let's kick things off. Obviously, the road trip started with facing the Cardinals, the 4-game series. And it came at kind of an odd time for the Dodgers because on one hand, they finished their homestand with a win, but Dustin May had a short start. There was, pretty significant injury concerns with him. And then the Dodgers, they go into the series opener at Busch Stadium, and it was just a wild game. If you need a refresher, it was, back and forth. The Dodgers wasn't back and forth, actually. The Dodgers were getting blown out. They slugged their way back into it, but still ended up losing 16-8. That game might be most remembered at this point with Julio Urias having a short outing and then some hamstring troubles that surfaced after that. Dodgers bounced back the next night. Tony Gonsolin, a nice start, 5 shutout innings. Then came back-to-back losses after that to end that series against the Cardinals. One of them was a 1-run loss. The other was 10-5. And the 10-5 defeat came in a Clayton Kershaw start, which I don't think any of us would have sort of predicted. So that was sort of the Cliff Notes version of everything. And AJ, I'm going to start with you. Was there one, kind of big takeaway or key factor that you saw, good or bad from the Cardinal series?
The good was the run production. They scored 23 runs in 4 games, which is not, most of the time, like if you're looking on paper and you say, hey, your team's going to score 23 runs in 4 games, you're like, that should do it, especially historically with the Dodgers. But on some days, as you mentioned, our starting pitching didn't hold up. On other days, our bullpen blew up. And it might be unfair to say they blew up on a couple of games. They were kind of just there to take the brunt of it. Like I know Andre Jackson had another one of those where he bravely shouldered the responsibility of getting shelled. Yeah, I think the pitching is obviously this huge concern that we're all worried about because we're used to injuries. The Dodgers always have injuries throughout the season, but it's been pretty significant with the pitching staff from the starters to the bullpen. But if I'm going to put a positive spin on it, they still scored runs even with a couple of bats really struggling. So was it frustrating to watch? Yeah, it was rough to watch. But they scored some runs, and you've got to believe the pitching is going to even out once hopefully everyone is healthy.
Yeah, that's a great point, Daniel. Where do you fall? Because like AJ said, the pitching was kind of behind the eight ball the entire time leading into that series, and they couldn't get any sort of length to begin with, and it just kind of kept feeding into itself. But then on the other hand, it was a red hot Cardinals team, so to speak. It wasn't the same Cardinals team the Dodgers had faced at Dodger Stadium. So, do you take everything with kind of grain of salt? Were you disappointed? Where did it fall for you?
Yeah, I mean, just coming into this road trip, when you look at who they had on the schedule, sitting here looking at a 4-6 record is honestly not all that bad when you consider the circumstances. Like, AJ alluded to it, the starting pitching staff is pretty much in shambles right now, and because of that, the bullpen has been insanely overworked. So I feel like my takeaways from that series are kind of the same as you guys. Like the offense, they stepped up, and that kind of was the theme of the whole road trip. I feel like overall offensively, they a lot of guys are swinging the bat well right now, which is necessary just with the overall state of the starting rotation. But in that Cardinals series specifically, like AJ said, like it was a rough series for the bullpen. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat that. They were throwing more innings than they had to. Guys had to wear it at certain times. But I think as we move into the rest of the road trip, I think the bullpen kind of figured it out. So that's good at least. But I think just for that Cardinals series, like Matt said, they were catching a hot team. Your own injuries are catching up to you. So I think that was an unfortunate series to kick off the road trip. But I do like the way that they bounce back after that series.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue that can take us right into the Braves series, which was next. And this one for me, when the road trip started, not to necessarily overlook the Cardinals, but the Braves, obviously at the time that that series started, the Braves had the best record of the National League. And so you're kind of looking at it as, okay, this could be a pretty good test for the Dodgers, but then, their starting pitching just couldn't get their legs under them. And then you layer in, the first two games are going to be started by Gavin Stone and Bobby Miller. The defense, again, didn't help Gavin Stone in that first game of the series. The Braves scored 4 runs in the first inning. But the Dodgers, sort of kept chipping away, and they ended up pulling out an 8-6 win. And you're, I think, feeling pretty good about yourselves, right? You erase that deficit, you come up with a win, and then you have Bobby Miller going the next night, and there was some excitement, but I think also some questions of, is he going to be able to handle kind of the environment of Truist Park, a deep Braves lineup? He ended up holding his own, I think, safe to say. And there was it was a learning curve. There were some pitches I'm sure that he'd like to have back, but he picked up the win. Dodgers, the game was tied after the first inning, and then the Dodgers scored 7 unanswered runs. And all of a sudden, you're looking at this series, I think, a lot differently because you've won the first 2 games. You're in position to potentially sweep. That ended up falling short. Tony Gonsolin, there was some good and bad from him. Dodgers only got 1 run off Bryce Elder. And then their comeback, they kind of put some runs up against the Braves bullpen, but, fell just short. So, Daniel, like I asked AJ for the Cardinals series, what was your kind of opinion, interpretation of how the Dodgers held up against the Braves?
I feel like the offense was kind of the same as the Cardinals series. Like they definitely showed up. So I think my takeaway was just that the young starting pitchers didn't, they were able to handle their own. Like I know Stone had that rough first inning, but outside of that, they did a good job of keeping the Dodgers in those games against a very tough Braves lineup in Atlanta. Like for that to be, specifically talking about Bobby Miller, for that to be your MLB debut against that lineup in that ballpark, like that's not easy. And I think he did a really good job. I think he commanded his pitches really well. I think the Braves, were fouling off some really tough pitches from him, and he just kept pounding the zone. So I'd say that was my takeaway. Those 2 guys, for them to keep their cool, and I know Stone has that rough first inning, but after that, they kept the Dodgers in it, and the bullpen did a nice job as well. And that to me, like obviously we would have loved a sweep. And I think in that third game, they could have had some more hits with runners in scoring position, and it could have been, a different result. But I think overall, for you to take 2 out of 3 in that series, and the 2 wins you did get were against Atlanta's best 2, starting pitchers that are healthy at the moment. So for you to do that with your 2 top prospects that had pretty much no experience coming in, I thought that was really impressive.
Yeah, let's take a minute and let's dive into the Bobby Miller stuff. To quote Dan, no disrespect to Gavin Stone, but I think Bobby Miller obviously was kind of the main focal point of that series because it was his debut. And so, Laura's asking, he's looking forward to his next start, which is coming Monday. AJ, you don't necessarily need to answer the question of fluke or real deal, but what was your impression of how Bobby Miller did in his debut?
I remember we were talking about it. I can't remember who of us on the staff. We were kind of talking like over under. Would he even make it 3 innings? And when he went 5, I think everybody celebrated. And again, against a very good Braves lineup. I think everything that's been scouted about him, that his fastball is obviously in the upper echelon as far as velocity, but maybe not movement, that played out mostly true. They were hitting some ropes off of his fastball, but it was his other pitches that honestly impressed me. I mean, we knew that they were good, but that's what really helped keep them off balance. That's what kind of kept him in the game. And I was impressed because I always think back to this story that the late, great Mike Brito told about Fernando Valenzuela when he went to go scout a shortstop. He stopped paying attention to the shortstop and he was watching the pitcher who walked the bases loaded but kept getting out of it. And at that age, at Miller's age, to show that kind of poise to get into those jams against the Braves, who are really good, that to me spoke volumes about the fact that he's ready. I think a lot of us weren't sure if he was quite ready because he obviously has the stuff. But at least based on that performance, I was like, he's ready. Give him another start.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, for me, heading into that start, I thought anywhere from 3 to 4 innings, 3 or 4 runs allowed. You know, it's his debut. There's some nerves that come with that. It's on the road. It's against the Braves, a deep Braves lineup, a team that, you know, had been leading the National League in the standings up until, you know, that kind of series started. So, yeah, I think Bobby Miller did. He far and away exceeded expectations. And my thought was he did earn another start, and I wasn't sure if the Dodgers necessarily give it to him, but it was nice to see Dave Roberts that night say, you know, yeah, like we're going to keep him in the rotation at least one more turn. We'll get into, you know, some of the rotation issues later in the show, but yeah, Bobby Miller will make another start. And real quick before we move on to the race series, I think maybe, I don't know how you guys kind of felt. It was a little refreshing for me to see Freddie Freeman be able to go to Atlanta and kind of, you know, like stay a little bit more composed. It's not as weird for him this time. So I thought that was nice. I don't know if either of you have strong feelings.
I don't really care, to be honest, but I do think it was cool. Just the way he, ever since even last year, like when he was going through all those emotions, like he was still able to compartmentalize and still had a really good series offensively. And I think that was the case again this series. Made some nice defensive plays too. So, you know, I know Braves are probably happy with Matt Olson. He's a good player too. But I think what we saw is just that Freddie's pretty much on a different level than every other first baseman in the league at this point.
Yeah, I saw Matt Olson make a couple errors that series that Freddie Freeman would never do. AJ, real quick, before we move on, were you surprised that Freddie got another standing ovation? I'm pretty sure it was just in the series opener and maybe just his first at bat, but were you surprised he got another standing ovation?
I don't think so. Braves fans, I think, recognize the contributions that Freeman gave to that organization, leading them to a World Series. I think the underrated part of Freeman's career there was he stuck around during a rebuild, because after 2014-15, the Braves stunk for a couple years. He showed faith in the organization, and they rewarded him by 2018. We were facing them in the NLDS again. So, I mean, he deserved that ovation, and it was nice to see him get it.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's move on to the final leg of the road trip. The Dodgers took 2 of 3 from who were the National League leaders and the Braves. And then here come, you know, the end of a long road trip is the Tampa Bay Rays are waiting for you. The best record in baseball. Some of their strengths highlighted the Dodgers' weaknesses, especially, you know, when you look at the probables and you see Noah Syndergaard is starting that first game. And it sort of, I think, at least for me, went somewhat expected. At least Syndergaard did give the Dodgers 6 innings. You know, it was a loss, and he did have to sort of wear it, I think, was that length. But then the next game, the Dodgers bounced back. Clayton Kershaw returned from the bereavement list. Still wasn't a typical start that we've been used to seeing from him, especially when you look at, you know, he was National League Pitcher of the Month for April. And then good old Sunday rolled around with the 8:35 start in LA, the Peacock game. We'll get into the Peacock angle specifically later on. But man, I mean, it was crazy, right? And, you know, Gavin Stone, at least for me, facing the Rays lineup, my expectations were pretty low. It sort of went how I kind of expected. But then the Dodgers, you know, slugged their way back into it, took a lead even. Trace Thompson, 3 for 3, ended his 0 for 39 drought. He hit a home run. But then ultimately it was Luke Raley, who, a lot of fans might remember with the Dodgers. He had his fingerprints all over the game, right? Making a couple catches, making a couple catches in left field. Then he ends up legging out that infield single in that, I think it was in the 7th inning, and he ended up scoring later, and that was the winning run for the Rays. And so, AJ, I'll start with you. On one hand, the Dodgers were in it. Again, it was another relatively competitive series, I think you could say. But, losses are losses. And so they lose 2 of 3 to the Rays. If you want to kind of expand on just your overall thoughts on the road trip, then that's fine. Or if you want to focus on the Rays series, that's also fine. But what did you make of, kind of how Sunday went and losing a second game to Tampa Bay?
My family went to that game today. They had tickets. They're from Florida. They're from Florida, or they live in Florida. And I remember texting my sister going, she's like, hey, did we get confirmation on who's starting today? And I went, I'm not sure. And I kind of didn't tell the truth. But the thing about it was that when I was watching him pitch, his changeup has some nice depth to it. And his fastball does have a little bit of zip to it, but he was leaving a lot of them in the zone. And then a couple of really good pitches he made, they still smacked it. So it was kind of it was what I expected given his experience. And I don't like to judge, especially a guy that young, on a couple of first starts against good teams. But yeah, it was ugly, man. But honestly, I just loved the fight. They fought back into the game. Seeing Taylor start hitting again was phenomenal for me because he's just looked rough at the plate, but he looked great today at the plate. Just seeing them compete was frustrating to see him lose in the end, but seeing them compete and fight back into that game, I wasn't that unhappy, if I'm being honest.
Daniel, where do you land with everything? I think, like I said, Syndergaard starting the series opener, and we'll get into the stolen base discussion, later, but he struggles with it. The Rays lead baseball in that category, but it's also not just Syndergaard on the Dodgers. And so I think, was it sort of to be expected what you got from him? Was it a little bit better since he at least did give them 6 innings?
Given the state of the bullpen, you'll take the 6 innings, but you would definitely like the run prevention to be a little better there. And obviously the Syndergaard experiment hasn't gotten off to the best start, and who knows how long it's going to continue. I know right now they don't have too many other options. So everyone's saying they should cut him now. Let me just tell you, it's not going to happen. Like, they don't even have, they hardly have 5 healthy starting pitchers at the moment. So they're going to keep trotting him out there, hoping he could get better. But yeah, my main takeaway from that whole series, firstly, was just that the Rays are really good. Like, when you see that lineup, like every guy that steps to the plate, they put their little stats on the bottom, and every guy's got like a 900 OPS with like 12 homers, and they're all guys who you probably never have heard of before. So really impressed with the Rays. I think I forgot who in the comments here, and I think Scott mentioned it as well. Like, they kind of remind me of the 2021 Giants, where it's just not necessarily stars on the roster, but like just everyone's just having a career year and they're coming together really well as a team. So credit to the Rays. They're having a great year, and who knows, maybe we'll see them again down the line in October, maybe a little 2020 rematch. But I also agree with AJ that the Dodgers, they were fighting to the very end today, so I thought that was really impressive. He mentioned Chris Taylor. Trace Thompson was another guy who hadn't gotten a hit in like a month and a half and ends up having a really good day today. So yeah, that's, I feel like that series was kind of like a microcosm of the whole road trip, where guys are swinging the bat really well. The bullpen, I thought, did a pretty solid job in this series. Like, they weren't perfect by any means, but I thought they did okay. And for the most part, the starting pitching was what let them down. And, that's just kind of the state of the team right now. It won't be the state of the team forever. I know Julio will be back eventually. Michael Grove pitched really well in the minors, so he's probably about to take Gavin Stone's spot. But yeah, I think, ideally you'd like to get out of there with a series win in a 5-5 road trip. But considering the circumstances, you got an early game, it's getaway day. You're playing in the Trop, which is just a weird place to play. I was pleased with how they played. I think the Rays just played a little better and ended up winning the series. But Yeah, I thought it was really good. And then just to comment on Gavin Stone real quick, I'm pretty much in agreement with AJ. Like, I think he just needs to find that put away stuff that, maybe he needs more time developing in the minors. But I think the biggest difference between, double or triple A and major leagues is guys are going to punish the mistakes you make. Like, you're not going to get away with throwing one right down the middle too often at this level, especially against a lineup like the Rays. So I just think Gavin needs to kind of refine his stuff a little, work on his command. And we'll probably see him again at some point this year. I would imagine they're going to send him back down. I know Dave Roberts said they weren't exactly sure yet. But that's what I'm expecting to happen. We'll see in the next couple days. But yeah, I mean, outside of the starting pitching, I think it was, a really good series for the Dodgers.
Yeah. So let's end on this. I'll come right back to you, Daniel, real quick. Dodgers 4-6 on the road trip, tough opponents. Like we said, starting pitching, bullpen, things aren't necessarily great. What grade do you give them?
I think it was a B+ road trip. I definitely think it could have been better, specifically that Cardinals series. I think if if you get a series split there or take 3 out of 4, then you're looking at you're looking at a positive record on the road trip. But I think the important thing, throughout the course of a 162 game season, especially this time of year where it's still pretty early, like, you just want to be playing good baseball. Like, you're not going to win every day, but if you got guys that are taking good at bats, if you got pitchers that are pounding the zone, then I think overall you're pretty pleased. And I think specifically with the lineup, the Dodgers are swinging the bats well right now, probably the best they have all year. So I think you got to be pleased with that. So yeah, I'll go B+.
All right, AJ, what about you?
B-, but only taking into results, maybe not with the moral victories if we're going to grade that way. But I mean, I'm never the type to do this, but in that Cardinals series, if you have a competent umpire in that 9th inning, who knows how that series becomes a split? It's possible. Like I said, it's not typical of us to complain about the umpiring, and the umpire in that particular game wasn't bad earlier, but that 9th was pretty atrocious. There was some pretty stark missed calls. Our starting pitching is held together with duct tape, and to face good teams and come out of it for 4-6, a solid B is fine.
All right. I will say you guys are a little bit more favorable graders than what we're getting in the comments. Michael Carrillo gave them C- at best. BMR 209 said a B, so sort of in line with AJ, a little lower than Daniel. This one, BC, tough grader, D+ or C-. Let's see. I think that's where we're at. Yeah. So, all right, we can close the discussion on the road trip, and now let's transition to Gavin Stone. I know, Daniel, you just got into it a little bit. Dave Roberts said after Stone's, well, first let me backtrack, actually. Stone has made 3 starts for the Dodgers. His MLB debut was against the Phillies. He then faced another rough team. I don't know why I'm blanking on it right now.
He's made three total starts?
Yes, I thought so.
The Braves and the Rays on this road trip.
That's right. Yeah, we just talked about Braves and then Rays. So he's allowed at least 4 earned runs in all 3 of his starts. He went 4 innings, and then, like we said, 2 innings against the Rays. Daniel, I know I'll ask you. I know you think he maybe needs some time back at OKC. So how would you sort of evaluate what you've seen from Stone so far, some of the good and bad, with factoring in, like we said, the lineups that he's had to face?
Yeah, I mean, the results are the results. Like, they were not great. And I think particularly the first inning is where he's really struggled. And that's an issue for some guys. We know that with Julio, like, that's been a thing his whole career pretty much. So I don't know. I can't say that with Gavin just yet. We got to see more. But I think there were some positives to take away. I think his changeup looks really good. I think his composure on the mound is really good. Like, obviously he had some rough innings mixed in there, and he kept his cool. So for a young guy, that's not always easy. So I think there were some positives to take away, but I just think he needs to, work on, being able to use his off-speed stuff to put guys away. We know he doesn't have the Bobby Miller fastball. He's not up there throwing 99, 100. He's, 93, 94. So you're not necessarily going to, blow it by guys at this level. So I think he's got to work on his command and refining his off-speed stuff, which, look, if we're being honest, I don't think any of us expected, him to be up this early in the season. Like, I thought, we were thinking maybe around the All-Star break, August, towards the later half of the season. So the fact that he's able to come up, this early, and at least compete and like in that Braves game, he settled in a little bit, gave the Dodgers a chance, to come back in that game, and they did. So I'm still really high on him long term. I just think he needs, at least a couple more months at AAA to work on his stuff.
Wow. So a couple more. So you would send him down for a couple more months before bringing him back up, or would you let him kind of?
A lot of this depends on health. If we're being honest, like the Dodgers, at the end of the day, they need 5 healthy starters, and right now he's one of the only 5 guys they have. So I think ideally in a perfect world, we don't see him till after the All-Star break, which is like pretty much 2 months. So yeah.
Okay. AJ, I'll come to you with this. So like I just mentioned, Dave Roberts did say after Stone start against the Rays that the Dodgers are going to sort of reassess and kind of evaluate where his next start's going to be. And if it's not with the Dodgers, then, it's probably looking like Michael Grove, who was pitched well in his 2 rehab assignments with OKC. So I'll throw this one to you. What would you do if you were the Dodgers with deciding where Gavin Stone's next start is? Is that the major league level, or are you sending him back to AAA?
Not punitively, but I would send him back to AAA because, it's like when someone's having a bad night from the floor in the NBA. Like once you get to the foul line, you watch a few balls go in. Psychologically, it's helpful. I mean, look at Vesia. He was horrific. He went down to AAA, had a god-awful appearance in his first appearance in AAA, and since then, I haven't checked since yesterday, but he's been pretty much nails. But with Gavin, it does seem like more of a refinement with his command. Maybe go over how he's mixing his pitches, because the pitches are good. The stuff is good. The command is lacking. The maybe how they're calling the pitches in between, like how they're attacking the hitters. And yeah, he faced some really good teams. So in a perfect world, he goes down there for additional seasoning, not punitively, obviously. And we can bring Grove back, who I remember specifically the start against the Diamondbacks. Like there were a lot of unlucky pitches in that. Like he threw pretty well. Like there were pitches he made where I was like, he hit his spot. It's they just hit the ball. So like I'd like to see him come back and see what he can give, if only for the fresh arm, giving him an opportunity. And you don't want Gavin to just like crash and burn up here, because that could be damaging in the long run.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, we'll kind of tie it up with this. For me, the Dodgers can't, like Daniel said, you guys have both said, the Dodgers don't have enough healthy starting pitchers. Obviously, if they did, I don't think Gavin Stone would have been up this early. I still am a little surprised, though, that when he made his debut, it wasn't fully necessary for him to make his debut when he did. So it surprised me that the Dodgers had him start against the Phillies. Now, since then, I think it's just been luck of the draw and how injuries have gone that he's had to face the Braves and the Rays after that. The results are the results, but I agree with you guys. The Dodgers typically have tried to find, softer landings for their rookie pitchers to make MLB debuts. Pepio on the road against the Pirates. Bobby Miller, I mean, he got thrown into the fire too, but again, injuries. So I think it's just been a little unfortunate of how that stuff has had to happen. But I agree with you guys. Stone can definitely use some time at OKC. So now let's move on.
I'm also just real quick. I'm seeing some people in the chat saying they should trade him. I think that's an overreaction, to say the least. We've seen 3 starts from him. I think if you look at the minor league numbers, they're still really good. I'm still really high on him long term. I know I've said that already, but sometimes, like AJ said, like you can't just keep throwing him out there, and if he keeps getting hit, it's going to kill his confidence. So I think. I like the basketball analogy there. You send him down to AAA. Hopefully, he has some good outings, and then you give him another shot.
Yeah, as a shooter myself, I can attest to. You get to the free throw line, and one goes in, and all of a sudden, you're shooting the ball into an ocean.
It doesn't take much for you to get hot on the hardwood. I know that. I've seen it.
All right, so let's get back to baseball before we start losing some viewers.
Microwave Moreno.
There you go. Stolen bases. It's been a theme all season long for the Dodgers. As you see, through games on Sunday, they've allowed 73, which is worse than the majors. I think Noah Syndergaard has kind of drawn the brunt of this criticism, but it's not entirely fair in my opinion. If you look at the Rays series in particular, they stole 5 bases on Sunday. Syndergaard didn't throw a pitch on Sunday. And it's coming, I think what's also frustrating is it's not only happening at second base, but they're getting third base, with relative ease. Some of that is self-inflicted, especially again this past weekend where Muncy and Taylor just completely whiffed on 2 tags. There was technically a third one that Taylor was involved in. AJ, I think you were a little bit more critical of him on that one than I was, because I felt like he was breaking over kind of in a dead sprint from the shift. So I cut him a little bit of slack, but hey, numbers are the numbers. Dodgers aren't controlling the run game. Daniel, I've seen you tweet about it. You did again on Sunday. Why do you think it's been such an issue for the Dodgers? Because it's not like the next closest team to them, I think, is the White Sox, who have allowed like 52 or 53 stolen base. So the Dodgers are far away, deficient in this area. Is there a reason for that you can pick up on?
I think the reason for it is that the Dodgers don't really seem to care. Like they haven't made any changes. And I think first of all, there's 2 issues here, and you just mentioned them both. Like first, it's on the pitchers. They got to get to the plate quicker. Like I know in my high school team and in my college team, both of them, if you weren't 1.3 seconds or quicker to the plate, you were not on the mound. Like it was really that simple. Like it didn't matter how good of a pitcher you were. If you could not get to the plate quick enough, you were not on the mound, and that forces you to make the adjustments necessary. And I know it's not exactly easy in the middle of the season. Like this is stuff that should have been addressed in spring training and in the off season. But I think it's clear that the Dodgers don't really seem to care. And part of me understands it. Like you want to be able to execute your pitches. And if you get guys out, then, the run game isn't nearly as important. But what we're seeing is that teams are running wild on them, and it's costing them. Like if a guy's on first base, it takes at least 2 hits to score him. But when he's stealing 1 or 2 bases, he might not even need a hit to score. He might score on a sac fly. He might score on a ground ball. So I think it's really costly, and there's been no effort to make any sort of changes. Like very few guys on this staff have any sort of slide step to get to the plate quick. Like they're picking their leg all the way up. They're taking their time. And I just feel bad for the catchers because that puts them in a really, really bad spot. Like I know Will Smith has a good arm. Most of his throws are right on the money, and it really doesn't matter. And then the second aspect of it is the tags. And I know AJ was tweeting about this. Like they need to teach the guys, when you tag them, go straight down to the bag. Like if you go to like chase the guy, he's going to slide right under and get his hand under there while you're tagging his chest or whatever. So I think you just got to catch it and go straight down. And I know it's not necessarily easy. Guys are doing swim moves and guys are getting creative, but I think you're in a better chance if you're at the bag than if you're going to chase him,
Yeah, the cynic in me for that one is Chris Taylor is excelled as a utility man, and he hasn't played very much third base, and so it's to be not expected, but that's kind of what happens in that situation. Muncy, I've been on the record of not necessarily fully understanding why the Dodgers believe in him defensively as a third baseman. I thought if it wasn't going to be first base because of Freddie Freeman, it's obviously understandable. I thought second base was his best position, but I'll digress on that subject. AJ, I'll come to you. Is there anything that the Dodgers can do to kind of solve this issue? I know Daniel is of the mind that maybe they just don't necessarily care. But if they do, is there something that you think they could try doing to kind of curtail how many stolen bases they're giving up?
I'm no Mark Pryor, but if you're in the stretch and you've got a Hideo Nomo like timing to the plate, you got to incorporate a slide step. You got to make some kind of adjustments to that. Yeah, they obviously only have it's 3 disengagements, correct?
Technically 2. You have to get him
2.
on the third one.
You have to use those as well. I think they don't have a choice. It's not like it's not a small problem. It's a huge problem with for Syndergaard, it should be also an act of self-preservation, because I'm willing to bet 4 or 5 of those earned runs could be wiped off the board if multiple runners aren't taking second and third base. So, yeah, I don't know if there's a slide step that they're going to have to incorporate. I don't know if Mark Pryor has other things cooking in his lab, but if he doesn't, he's got to get the stove on, because this is a huge problem.
Yeah, and I don't see the comment now. I've seen a couple of them, and I saw it on Twitter too, and I think it is somewhat of a fair criticism and concern is what this means, assuming the Dodgers get to the postseason. 90 feet. I mean, Dave Roberts has said it. 90 feet is everything in the playoffs. And so do you guys, are you concerned that if they don't improve in this scenario, that it's going to end up costing them not only a game, but a potential series?
I'm incredibly concerned, just to be honest. Like, this is the one thing I'm probably most concerned about, even more so than the starting rotation right now. Like, I think the book's been out for a while. You could steal on the Dodgers. They're not going to hold you on. And even guys, like, it's not even like the guys who are like the top tier base stealers. It's like middle tier type guys. Like Luke Raley is running wild, and I don't know what his sprint speed is on StatCast, but I'd be willing to guess it's not in the 90 percentiles. Like, so guys know, you're going to, looking ahead to the postseason, you're going to face some athletic teams. Like, who knows? Padres might be there. They got a lot of guys that run. The Braves got guys that run. We just saw what the Rays did. Like, teams that are athletic and run, they're going to run wild on the Dodgers if they don't make any sort of adjustments here.
Yeah,
Didn't
AJ,
Yan Gomes have multiple steals against us?
Yeah,
Yan Gomes.
And I'll even add, I think Paul Goldschmidt swiped 1 or 2 bags against the Dodgers too. I think it might have been when they were playing at Dodger Stadium, but yeah,
And so, just real quick, on the other end of it, I think we need to see the Dodgers run more and exploit these other teams as well. I know they kind of started off not running at all, and they've picked it up a little bit. But I'd like to see – I know you want to preserve your main guys in the regular season. Like, you don't need Mookie out there running wild and Freddie and such. But all those guys could steal bases when the time is right. So I'd like to see that a little more as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it was kind of weird how, Dodgers weren't stealing any bases basically for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then they went through a stretch of maybe a week to 10 days where all of a sudden, the joke, like, they became a running team. And guys, and I agree with you. I don't know. Maybe it is, a health factor that they just don't want everybody running a ton, but it's kind of weird to see the extremes, like the pendulum, how much it's kind of swung from both extremes. Like, they're just not necessarily in the middle with that. But AJ, anything you want to add before we move on?
If Yasmani Grandal steals bases on us in mid-June, I'm quitting.
Okay, there. All right. Well, we have that on record. Hopefully it doesn't happen. We want AJ to stay with our staff, but time will tell. So let's move on now to James Outman. Obviously got off to a hot start. He was nationally rookie of the month for April, and the calendar turned to May, and it's just been the complete opposite. And as we sit here now, in his last 15 games, 10 of those were starts. Outman's just 4 for 42 with 21 strikeouts. Part of that is he's mired in an 0 for 18 stretch with 10 strikeouts. I think, some of it was to be expected, right? We've seen rookies in some sense go through situations like this. But Daniel, I'll start with you. What's your level of concern with what you've seen from James Outman during the month of May?
I mean, you definitely got to be a little concerned, just because it's not like he was like the number 1 overall prospect and he came up and was doing great. Like, he was kind of a mid-tier prospect that no one really expected to get off to the start that he did. So obviously no one's ever gonna, no one's gonna come up and just hit having an 1,000 OPS for their whole career. Like, guys are gonna slumps. Even the best guys are gonna do it. And when you're a rookie, the league is gonna find out where you struggle, and they're gonna make the adjustments. Like, these pitchers are really good. These coaching staffs are really good. And I think that's what we're seeing with Outman right now specifically. I mean, the high velocity, he struggled. It's kind of like watching Cody Bellinger all over again, just the way pitchers are attacking him. So I think he'll get back on track. I see the question right there. I think he'll get back on track eventually, but he's in a slump right now. Some of it at this point could be mental. I mean, when you're striking out that much, you're definitely not feeling good. But I'd still keep trotting him out there. I know he's gotten a few more off days recently, which I think is good, helps him reset a little bit. But I think he'll come out of it. I think the talent's there, the athleticism is there. But this was bound to happen at some point.
Yeah, AJ, where do you fall? Because I think it's clear that majority of opponents have attacked Outman with elevated fastballs. And when we got a chance to talk to him right before the homestand ended, because he hit the big home run against the Twins, and he said, he was asked, "Have you noticed pitchers, attacking you differently?" He said, "Yeah, it's more elevated fastballs." And he said it's kind of strange because historically it's a pitch that I've hit well. So, do you keep giving him regular starts? Do you maybe take him out of the lineup a little bit more infrequently to give him kind of the mental break to work on things? What approach would you have?
I think you keep giving him starts. I might give him one extra day off a week, maybe, especially if it's, if you're facing a lefty high velocity guy, maybe that's a little cruel to put him in the lineup. My level of concern is kind of the same as Daniel's. Like it happens. This is what happens with every guy who has a hot start. They start to figure you out. My concern maybe like elevated to a 3 or a 4 in the past week or two, where I've seen him swing and miss on low pitches in the zone that he was feasting on before. But it's just that's part of the slump. Like when you're slumping, it's not just your cold zones that you're missing pitches. It's everywhere. But I think him and the staff can help him figure it out. And I'm not that worried. But yeah, I might excuse me, give him a light platoon.
Yeah, and I'll even add to it. It seems to happen, especially with young players who are going through slumps. Any borderline call tends to go against you, or at least it feels like that to me watching. So I can only imagine, from Outman's perspective of, hey, that pitch may have been a little low, but you're still calling it a strike. So it doesn't help. I know, Dave Roberts has maintained his confidence in him, and frankly, the Dodgers sort of need Outman to kind of figure it out because of not only what he brings defensively, but also the options behind him aren't necessarily the best. And we're going to get into one of those, who is Trace Thompson. He, like I mentioned earlier in the show, he ended his 0 for 39 drought with a 3 for 3 day. He hit a home run. I think he had an RBI single. He even added a walk. I think the only negative to this was that it came on a day that Jeff, unfortunately, isn't here to celebrate Trace's success. So we're going to have to sort of do it for him. And I'll ask this, AJ, I'm coming to you kind of, it was only one game, obviously, but is there reason that this, to believe this maybe could be a springboard to get Trace semi-productive again?
Trace historically has always been one of those significantly cold streak and hot streak guys. We've seen it with certain Dodgers over the years. Yasmani Grandal, who I've already referenced twice now, was like that a lot too, where he'd have 2 weeks where his ops was in the 4s, and then he'd have a week after that where his ops was over 1,000. Thompson's slide was obviously pretty significant and over the top, but I think we could see him like produce for like another week or two and then have another cold streak, which if that's the case, it's fine if he goes hot and cold for an even amount of time. But if he has another one of those 0 for 35 plus, then there's concern that he may not be on the roster come June or July.
Yeah, and that's a page out of Jeff's book there. I don't know if Jeff has given him that much rope. I think he's been ready to cut him after the first day of the season, it seemed like. Daniel, do you see a scenario where maybe Trace finds some sort of consistency? Obviously, his success today did come against left-handers. The Dodgers have insisted on keeping him in that role, even though he hasn't hit lefties really in his career, and definitely not this season. But do you see a scenario where maybe Trace gets some sort of consistency at the plate?
I mean, look, that had to have been like a big weight lifted off his shoulders, the day he had today. He hadn't gotten a hit since like the middle of April. And I know that's not easy, especially when you're not playing that often. Like you might get 1 or 2 starts a week, and for you to fail in your limited playing time, that makes it even worse. So first of all, I'm just happy for him, like just because I know that couldn't have been easy. And I know I've seen a lot of people piling on social media. And look, he's struggled. So I think that's fair game. But I think what you just said, makes perfect sense. Like he hasn't been in a role that's best suited for him. Like I know just looking at the roster, he's supposed to be that outfielder who hits against left-handed pitching and could be that platoon guy. But from everything we've seen from him, he's been kind of the opposite. So I'm not, if they're going to continue trotting him out there, solely against lefties, I'm not expecting some huge turnaround. I know they had a lefty on the mound today and he got some big hits, but I just think he's shown that he struggles against lefties. So it's unfortunate. I mean, just the way this roster is constructed, like there's not many opportunities for him against righties. Just you got so many other lefty outfielders that have all played well. So I think I'm not expecting some huge turnaround, but and I mean, anything better than 0 for 39 or whatever he was, we'll take it. He's only going to be. I don't think he's been starting very often. Maybe once a week, twice a week. But who knows? The baseball is a weird sport. That's how it is sometimes. Like it's very mental. Sometimes all you need is a bloop hit to get you going. Like sometimes hitting a ball 440 to center like Trace did today gets you going. So. It's good to see, and I think it's to be determined what we're going to get out of him, moving forward.
Yeah, and kind of what you're alluding to. We have this comment from TQT08. I wouldn't mind playing Trace versus righties for a bit. David Peralta isn't doing a thing
Offensively. The defense.
Yeah, that's fair. Peralta's played. He's impressed me with his defense in left field. But I think kind of speaking about Trace specifically. I think there's a point there where are the Dodgers? Do you think the Dodgers will ever sort of kind of bend and give Trace any sort of runway against right-handed pitchers, or is he just locked into his role?
Go ahead, AJ.
I gotta think he's locked into his role, unless he's included in some trade, which I don't see particularly happening. His value is obviously taking quite a hit. He's stuck in his role. I think maybe against his own good, hitting some lefties today might put him in a spot against some more lefties later this week. But maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe he's unlocked something against southpaws. But he plays pretty good defense in the outfield. I'm not going to say he plays great defense in the outfield. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but to the eye test, he's pretty good. And I think he's going to continue to see that split. Peralta isn't setting the world on fire, but his ops in the last time I checked, is at least near league average lately. He's picked it up. I'm not going to say he's on fire. But, Peralta's defense, kind of hard to ignore. It's the same thing we say about Chris Taylor, even if Taylor's maybe not the one specific place in the field where he's impressive. He plays pretty good defense everywhere, and that'll keep him in the lineup even when he's struggling. And I think the same is going to go for Trace, unless closer to the trade deadline they do make some big splash, which is possible. But
yeah, we'll have to save the trade deadline talk for a little bit closer to that. And I think I'll end it here with Trace. I agree with you guys. I think his role is just facing lefties for better or worse. The Dodgers are going to just kind of stick to that. And hey, maybe his performance on Sunday will kind of get something going. I think one of the most important things that we need, the people who are watching this and listening, is when Trace does something good, to make sure you tag Jeff and let him know so that he sees it, because we don't want Jeff missing any Trace Thompson highlights. So please, if you guys could just do that for us. All right, so we're getting close to the end. It's almost going to be time for you guys' questions. So if you have any, keep them in mind. Our last segment for tonight is just quick injury updates. Julio Urias, like we mentioned earlier, went on the 15-day IL. June 3rd was when he was expected to return. It's a left hamstring strain. The initial report from the Dodgers and Dave Roberts was that it was relatively mild. Julio was supposed to test it with a bullpen session at Tropicana Field this weekend. That didn't end up happening because there's some lingering soreness that he's dealing with, and so he's only throwing off flat ground. Daniel, I'll come to you. Hamstring injuries can be tricky. I know the Dodgers are trying to downplay, how much concern there is. I saw John Heyman. He reported in one of his articles that the Julio could be out 3 to 4 weeks, and it's a little bit ambiguous, but I wasn't sure what to make of it. But now, after seeing he didn't throw a bullpen session, where's your level of concern with that injury? Because like we've talked about throughout the show, starting pitching, the Dodgers are pretty thin on it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concern is not super high right now. I think as it continues, like if we go another week and they're still saying he's not throwing bullpens, then I think you get more concerned, just because the longer he's out, the more he's going to have to do to get back built up. I know originally they said he wouldn't need any rehab starts. Now that he's missing more time, that could change. He might need some rehab starts. So not super concerned right now. And to be quite honest, he wasn't pitching that great before getting hurt. I don't know. Matt, did they say was that like a lingering hamstring issue, and maybe that is the reason for some of his struggles?
I don't remember. Somebody might have said that. I'd have to go back and check. Somebody might have alluded to maybe he wasn't necessarily feeling 100%. what's strange is that, he struggled obviously against the Cardinals. He gave up, I think, the 4 home runs and 3 of them in a row, or 4 home runs in 1 inning, I think, or just, I don't know, 3 home runs in a row. I know that for sure. But there was no talk after that game of, hey, we think it might be this. It was all just, he potentially tipped pitches. Then the next day, Dave Roberts said, we checked that. He didn't tip. We don't think he tipped pitches. And then after he spoke, right before the game was starting, all of a sudden he's on the IL. And so it's kind of weird how that situation has been handled. I guess, if you want to find maybe some silver lining in his struggles this year.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
You could say, hey, like, it's the hamstring, right? Like, it is a contract year for him. And our guy Scotty's not on here to say how much he would want to pay Julio. But yeah, so, let's transition now to Max Muncy and kind of more hamstring talk. He came out of Sunday's game because of my favorite, what the Dodgers have described as a hamstring cramp. Muncy has played through it. It seems like the past couple days he was dealing with, at least some sort of tightness or discomfort, and he's going to get an MRI on Monday. So AJ, I'll come to you with this one. Even if it is only a cramp and Muncy avoids the IL, if he's not quite at 100%, what impact will that have on a lineup that he plays a key role in?
Well, it looked like he had found it again. He crushed over the weekend, and I can't remember if it was you, Matt, or Daniel, but like you mentioned earlier, like hamstring injuries are tough. They're hard to manage organizationally. They're hard to manage as a player because they feel fine when you're walking around, maybe even taking a swing, but the moment you start chugging to first, that's going to be, I think, tough for them to navigate. And I think even though the Dodgers are world class with dealing with injuries and not panicking and pushing players, but with the production that they've needed to get out of their hitting to make up for the lack of quality pitching they've been getting, I would worry that they would push him back into starting too soon, or at least playing, because they need that bat. I don't think that they do that. I think even at the expense of a few losses, they will shut him down if it gets worse. But like you said, it's impossible to tell how serious this really is, at least at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, even looking at it as it happened Sunday, he kind of limped into second base when he advanced on the throwing error. They checked on him. He stayed in the game. It wasn't that surprising. But then, he tagged on a sacrifice fly to take third, and then he tagged on another sacrifice fly to score. And at that point, I thought, okay, he is okay. But then, sure enough, he was taken out for the bottom half of that inning, not to play third base. So, yeah, time will tell. So, all right, we've reached pretty much the end. It's time for questions. And as a reminder for those of you, just start your question with the word question in all caps. It just makes it a little bit easier for us to kind of pick them out, and I can throw them in front of the guys. And they can be Dodgers, they can be food related, they can be anything else. And if you've watched our shows before, you know that any food discussions can get pretty interesting. I'll start with one while we wait for people to throw them into the chat. Daniel, I'm coming to you first. What was your thoughts on the Peacock stream? I know it's kind of polarizing that MLB has this streaming agreement with Peacock, and I'm asking you. I think it's safe to say nobody particularly cares for needing to subscribe to another service. So I'll just ask more from kind of the broadcast standpoint and the picture quality and stuff like that.
I thought Oral was good. It was nice having a familiar voice there. I didn't particularly care for the other two broadcasters. I'd say my main issue was the time, and I know AJ will disagree with this because he was an East Coast guy. But if that game was starting at 10 a.m., like a normal Sunday, East Coast game, I would have been fine with it. But the fact that they're making us wake up at, that not that I'm not up, like I'm usually up before 8 every day, so I was up already. But I just think if your goal is to get eyes on the game, that's just not the way to do it. I do think a lot of these broadcasts, whether it's Peacock, whether it's Apple TV, like they bring other stuff to the game, which I think is good. I know I saw a lot of people on Twitter weren't too happy with that McClanahan interview just because it went really long. And to me, that was the Dodgers' fault. Like they let the Rays score a lot of runs that inning. But I do like the other stuff they bring to the table. but yeah, I mean, lucky for me, like I know how to, get to Peacock. Like I know my dad can't really say the same thing. Like I had to tell him, like, you're not watching the game today because you don't have Peacock and you don't even know how to get to Peacock, even if you did have it. So I those are the people I really feel for. But overall, I think the broadcast does a good job. I just think the other stuff, the time, the fact that it's on a streaming service, I just think that's not the best way to grow the game as they say they want to do.
Yeah. AJ, any burning takes on Peacock?
I didn't mind the broadcast. I like the idea of getting one broadcaster for one team and one for the other. I don't like the camera angle at the Trop, but that's not Peacock's fault. I could go on a diatribe about how they're making it harder to watch games by having you to subscribe to all these places. But as far as the Peacock broadcast, no big complaints.
Yeah, I thought today's was okay. And it was better than last season when I think was it like the Housewives or something that they were interviewing during the game. And I was just like, what are we doing here? So I'll give them credit for at least
baseball, yeah.
cutting that aspect out. So, all right, we've got some good questions here. Let's start with, Let's start with Jason. Looking a little bit ahead. He's coming down to Southern California for the Yankee series. So he wants to know how the stadium will feel. Is it going to be similar to when the Giants come or when the Padres visit? Is it any sort of rivalry feeling? So, Daniel, I know you attend a lot of games with your dad. I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah. I think it was 2019, the last time the Yankees came to town. And I remember there were a lot of Yankee fans there. It did feel like a Giants or Padres type series where you got fans of both teams. You probably going to be competitive games, two good teams. I wouldn't say the Dodgers and Yankees are rivals by any means. Like I know, going back in history, going back in history, they kind of are. But these certain groups, there's not much there. But I'm expecting competitive games, and yeah, I would expect a lot of Yankee fans there. They only play. I know now it's going to change. They're going to start playing here more, but up until now, it's only every 4 years or whatever. So whatever SoCal Yankee fans there are excited to get out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. It should be a good atmosphere, and I think there will be a lot of Yankees fans that show up because historically, whenever they've been at Dodger Stadium within the past, when I've been there and the Yankees have been there in the past 10, 12-ish years, whatever, there have been a ton of Yankees fans. So next question is from Michael. AJ, you can answer this one. It's a little harsh. Why can't this organization develop good infielders? So he wants to know about the position players.
I mean, I could pull up Corey Seager's baseball reference page. I could pull up a few. Really, we might have had some struggles the last few years with some of the guys, but Vargas may not set the world on fire with his glove, but he's learning a new position, and I think he's been better than some of us expected, and he's hitting the ball. I don't think Bush was given quite enough time to show off whether he was a good infielder, but he hit while he was here. So, is there growing pains sometimes? Are we going to get, the second coming of Hank Aaron every time we call up a guy? I think we've been kind of spoiled by that, guys. We call up Cody Bellinger in 2017 because Adrian Gonzalez was struggling / injured, and he hits, I think it was 39 home runs in his rookie year where he gets called up at the end of April. We call up Corey Seager, Rookie of the Year. We call up Jock Peterson in 2015, Rookie. I mean, I understand the frustration, especially when there's struggles and we have guys in the 7th, 8th, and 9th batting who are struggling. And I'm not trying to take away from that feeling, but I think we do develop good middle infielders.
Okay.
I also think just to add to that, if you look at like kind of the Dodgers draft strategy, like they're looking at bats pretty much like Michael Bush, Dalton Rushing in recent years, Cody Hosey. Like if you look at all their top picks in recent years, it's guys that have been bat first and hopefully we'll find a spot for them defensively. So, that's kind of the trade-off. Like if you got a guy that's mashing, he's probably not going to be playing that good a defense, especially when you're the Dodgers and you're drafting, at the end of the first round, or sometimes you're even giving up that pick, if you're signing a guy with a qualifying offer or whatever. So you're not drafting top 10 guys where you could get an athletic shortstop that also rakes. Like, I mean, Gavin Lux I'd say they did a pretty good job with him. Unfortunately, the injury this year, but I agree. They have developed some pretty good infielders. And we are very spoiled.
Yeah, I agree. I think the question was a little harsh, Michael, but hey, we got it answered. Hopefully, you agree with the guys. Here's a good one. I think we can always count on Dong Kim to ask food questions. Daniel, I don't know if you've been on our show. Hot dog at some point was maybe 2 weeks ago was brought up. I said my preferred topping is like cheese, chili cheese type thing, and if not, I'll do like ketchup. So what's your setup? And then once he's done, AJ, you give me yours because I don't think you've been on. Did you answer this with Jeff yet, AJ?
No, I don't think I have.
All right. So Daniel, go for it. AJ, you go, and then I'm going to keep looking for more questions.
I think you got some heat for saying cheese, and I actually that was one of the rare times I actually agreed with you. I love a good chili cheese dog. But if that's not an option, if I'm just getting a hot dog with condiments, I'll go ketchup, mustard, and at Dodger Stadium they got the little onions. I'll throw some onions on there too. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Everyone from Chicago, plug your ears. It's a hot dog. It's the lowest form of processed meat, folks. If you want to put ketchup, if you want to put mustard, you want to put barbecue sauce. If you're a weirdo, you want to put mayo, I support it. Make it tasty.
I do not support mayo, I'll tell you that much.
I don't like mayo on a hot dog. My point is that it's not. We shouldn't be gatekeeping a friggin' hot dog. Put whatever on it that will make it less dry, make it tasty for you. The whole you don't put ketchup on a hot dog thing is preposterous.
I agree with you on that. I didn't understand it. I thought that was like the most standard thing, honestly.
Yeah, like that was like I felt one of my most like mundane like opinions, and that was like I got a ton of it right away when I said like how old are you, blah blah, and I was just like, okay, like I guess you can't put ketchup on hot dogs. So let's see. I saw a good one here. I think it was a question about here we go. Will the Dodgers trade for a different shortstop this season? AJ, what do you think?
I'm going to lean and say no, but I'm not going to say it's impossible. I know if Blake were here, his eyes would light up at the thought of a Tim Anderson and a pitcher for a couple of prospects. And hey, I'd love that. I love Tim Anderson. He's a good player. He's got a good glove. The Dodgers do have a small history of making trades like that, but not like a deep one. They're not like Preller and the Padres who will just throw whatever they want to get the immediate gratification. And I'm not, it sounds like I'm dogging them for that. And, you know, there's some times where that's worked out for them, and that's totally fine. That's not the Dodgers' MO. When they make a big splashy trade, they either really get a good deal out of it to the point where the other team is like, what did we just get? Or it's a fair trade. The trade with the Nationals where they got Ruiz and JoJo Gray was a fair trade. And we got Trey and Scherzer. And so if they do make a trade, they're going to give up some farm guys, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. All right. So we're winding down. We'll take one or two more. Here's one asking about Zach Birdie. It's why did the Dodgers sign him? He was technically claimed off waivers. Daniel, I think it's probably go ahead. I'll let you answer this one.
I mean, I'd say whenever the Dodgers claim a guy that we've never heard of, like this guy, it's because they see something that they either think they could address or fix, or change his pitch mix, or change something mechanical. It also is just for the simple fact that they need arms right now. They need healthy bodies. This could we might this guy might be DFA'd in a week, and we might never hear from him again. That's entirely possible. I know Jake Reed is probably out there somewhere ready to be claimed at some point too. I don't know. I think he might still be in the Dodgers organization, but this is just what you do throughout the course of a season, and this is how the Dodgers have found arms. Like, look at Evan Phillips. This was a similar type deal 2 years ago when it was actually the Rays that let him go, surprisingly. And the Dodgers claimed him. No one had ever heard of him. No one expected all that much, and here we are 2 years later. He's one of the best relievers in all of baseball. So usually they do this because they see something in the guy, and just for the fact that they need healthy arms.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've discussed this. Jeff has brought it up. Minor league signings, claiming guys off waivers. There's pretty much no risk. And Birdie is a relief pitcher, and the Dodgers, the bullpen has been overworked. And so if he can even give them a break, if it's only 2 games, that maybe they could save some of their other relievers, it ends up being worth it. Real quick, so I saw 2 more that I think we'll end on unless something else good comes up. It's Jason again. Heat or Celtics in Game 7? Daniel, what do you think?
It pains me to say it, but I think the Celtics are going to blow them out. I think all the win was just kind of sucked out of the Heat in that Game 6 loss. And if we're being honest, like the Celtics were always the way more talented team. So if any team was ever going to come back from 3-0, it would be in a situation like this where the better team just had 3 bad games and then kind of figured it out. So unfortunately, I'm going to pick the Celtics, but I'm hoping the Nuggets will handle that.
AJ, are the Celtics making history, or is Jimmy Butler going to show up in Game 7?
I hope to God Jimmy Butler shows up in Game 7. We can't let the city of Boston be the claim to fame for we come back from 3-0 to deficits. You want to know how many times we have to hear arrogant Boston Red Sox fan go on about how great their organization is? It's like, dude, before 2004, the last time you guys won a World Series, we didn't have cars. Slow your roll.
All right, so let's end with this one. It's another food question. It's just nachos ? So I guess I'm assuming does everybody like nachos on this video? Hopefully, okay. So
It's hard to not like nachos.
Daniel, what's your perfect platter of nachos looking like?
Give me a little carne asada on there. Obviously, cheese goes without saying. Throw some guac on there. A little salsa and some jalapenos. Pretty standard, I feel like.
Okay, AJ.
Give me that nacho helmet, man. Carne asada nachos from Dodger Stadium. If I don't want to pay, $98 for the ones at Dodger Stadium, I'll go to South Passy and find a taco truck and get them too. I got no problem with nachos. Yeah, I'll take them. However,
yeah, Laura was she's on board with you with the nacho helmet. And real quick, last one, olives on nachos. I'm going no. What about you guys?
I don't. It's not that I hate olives, but I just don't really see their purpose on pretty much anything. So I'll say no to olives.
Sounds like you hate olives.
I don't hate them. Like if they're there, I'll eat it. But I'm never like, oh yeah, give me olives on that. Like,
all right, AJ, I think you put up a thumbs down also.
I don't like olives. It's not like I've tried, honestly, because why not? I just don't care for them. But I'm not going to say like if I see it on someone else's, I'm going to go, what are you doing? Just not for me.
All right. Well, that does it. I think we got through that without upsetting too many people. So congratulations, guys.
You guys didn't upset me, so you guys take that as a win.
There we go. So thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. And again, if you're listening to this after the fact on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, just a reminder, our plan is, again, Dodgers have normal start times coming up this week. So we should be getting live playback streams on Tuesday and Fridays, and they would be followed by live postgame shows. Both of those nights, I'm not 100. Jeff should be hosting again. We're not 100% sure yet on which of our staff members will be rotating through that. But definitely tune in and join us for those. And yeah, that's about it. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Good job, Matt.